Picture this, a dimly lit photo lab, the air thick with the distinct smell of developing chemicals. It's a Friday evening on the campus of Westlake University, where most students have already left for weekend parties or trips home. The photography building sits at the edge of campus, its brick exterior blending with the autumn trees surrounding it. Inside, the main photo lab is a maze of enlargers, developing trays, and drying racks. Red safety lights cast an otherworldly glow across the room, transforming ordinary objects into mysterious silhouettes. In this atmospheric setting, we find Ethan Mitchell, a junior majoring in fine arts photography. Ethan stands at medium height, with perpetually tousled brown hair that falls across his forehead when he concentrates. His fingers are often stained with developer, and he carries his vintage Nikon camera everywhere like an extension of himself. Though talented, Ethan struggles with confidence in his work, constantly comparing himself to more established photographers. He's the type who spends hours perfecting a single print, meticulous about every detail, but hesitant to share his creations with others. Across the room stands Liam Rodriguez, also a junior but seeming to move through the world with an ease Ethan has always envied. Liam's dark, curly hair and quick smile make him instantly likable, and he navigates social situations with natural charisma. Unlike Ethan, who discovered photography through solitary experimentation, Liam came to it through his love of storytelling. His photographs capture people in unguarded moments, revealing character through expression. While Ethan worries about technical perfection, Liam shoots instinctively, caring more about emotional impact than perfect exposure. The two know each other from shared classes, but have never worked closely together until today. Their advanced photography professor assigned them as partners for a project exploring contrast through portraiture. They'd agreed to meet after regular hours to have the lab to themselves, planning to finish before the building closed at 9 p.m. But as often happens with creative work, time slipped away unnoticed as they discussed concepts and techniques. It was Ethan who first realized something was wrong. "Did you hear that?" he asked, looking up from the contact sheet he was examining. The building had fallen eerily quiet, the usual background hum of activity completely gone. Liam glanced at his phone. "It's 9:30. The building should have closed half an hour ago." He walked to the lab door and pulled the handle. It didn't budge. "I think we're locked in," he said, turning back to Ethan with an expression that hovered between concern and amusement. Ethan immediately felt his chest tighten. That can't be right. The security guard always checks the rooms before locking up. He tried calling the campus security office, but his phone showed no signal in the basement lab. Liam's phone similarly displayed the dreaded "no service" message. "Looks like we're stuck here until morning," Liam said, hopping up to sit on one of the counters. "Or until someone realizes we're missing, which might be a while since it's Friday night." Ethan paced the room, checking windows that were too small for escape and doors that were firmly locked. "This is a disaster," he muttered. "I have a deadline for the gallery submission tomorrow." "Look at it this way," Liam offered, his voice lightening the mood. "At least we have access to all the equipment we need to finish our project. And no distractions." Ethan stopped pacing and looked at Liam, surprised by his optimism. "I guess you're right. We might as well make the most of it." They decided to continue working, setting up in the darkroom to develop the film they'd shot earlier. The darkroom was even smaller than the main lab, a compact space designed for one person to work comfortably. With two people, they constantly brushed against each other, reaching for bottles of chemicals or adjusting equipment. As Ethan prepared the developing solution, Liam flipped on the red safe light and turned off the main lights. The room was immediately bathed in a deep crimson glow that transformed everything. In this light, features became softer, more mysterious. Shadows deepened, and the ordinary became extraordinary. "You know what they say about red lights," Liam said casually as he loaded film onto developing reels. Ethan looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Liam's smile was mischievous in the red glow. "Red light means yes when it's on." He moved slightly closer to Ethan, their shoulders touching as they stood side by side at the developing sink. The comment hung in the air between them. Ethan felt his face grow warm and was grateful for the red light that hid his blush. He'd always found Liam attractive but had buried those feelings deep, assuming they weren't reciprocated. Now, in this intimate space, with Liam's words creating a new possibility, Ethan didn't know how to respond. That's That's not what safe lights are for. He finally managed, focusing intently on measuring chemicals to avoid meeting Liam's eyes. Liam laughed softly. I know, just making conversation. But there was something in his tone that suggested he wasn't entirely joking. They worked in silence for a while. The only sounds the gentle slosh of chemicals and the ticking of the darkroom timer. The confined space made every movement a careful negotiation. When Liam reached past Ethan for the stop bath, his arm brushed against Ethan's back, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Sorry, Liam murmured, though he didn't sound particularly apologetic. It's fine, Ethan replied, his voice coming out slightly higher than normal. Small space. As they developed their film, the initial awkwardness gradually gave way to a comfortable rhythm. They took turns sharing stories about their first experiences with photography. Ethan described how he'd found his grandfather's old camera in the attic when he was 12 and had been captivated by the mechanical precision of it, the way it transformed three-dimensional reality into two-dimensional art. What about you? He asked Liam. How did you get started? Liam leaned against the counter, his face thoughtful in the red glow. My older sister was always the artist in our family. She painted, and everyone made such a big deal about it. I wanted my own thing, you know? I saved up for a cheap digital camera when I was 14 and started taking pictures of everything. But it wasn't until I photographed my grandmother on her 70th birthday that I realized what photography could do. I captured this moment where she was looking at old photos of my grandfather, who had passed away. There was so much love and loss in her expression. When I showed her the picture later, she cried and said I'd captured exactly how she felt. That's when I knew this was what I wanted to do. Capture feelings that are too complex for words. Ethan was struck by the vulnerability in Liam's story. It was a side of him he hadn't seen before in class, where Liam typically played the role of confident joker. That's beautiful, he said quietly. I've always admired how your photos capture emotion. Mine are too technical sometimes. That's not true, Liam countered. Your work has incredible attention to detail. The series you did on abandoned buildings last semester? I could feel the emptiness, the sense of time passing. It was powerful. Ethan looked up in surprise. You remember that project? Of course I do. I remember all your work. Liam's eyes held Ethan's for a moment before he looked away, suddenly interested in adjusting the developing tank. The conversation shifted to their current project, but something had changed between them. A new awareness hummed in the small darkroom, making every accidental touch feel significant. They finished developing the film and moved to the printing stage, working side by side at the enlargers. As the night progressed, hunger became an issue. They raided the small refrigerator in the professor's office, finding a forgotten sandwich and some granola bars. Sitting on the floor of the main lab, sharing this makeshift meal under the red safe lights, they began to talk more personally. Can I ask you something? Liam said, breaking a comfortable silence. Why photography? You're talented enough to do anything. What makes you so passionate about it? Ethan considered the question, taking his time to formulate an answer. I think it's because I've always felt like an observer. Even in a crowded room, I feel slightly apart from everyone else, watching rather than participating. Photography gives that perspective a purpose. It validates seeing the world from a step back. He paused, then added more quietly. Plus, there's something honest about a photograph. It captures reality, but it's also subjective. It's how I see the world. It's the closest I can come to showing people what it's like inside my head. Liam nodded slowly. I get that. For me, it's almost the opposite. I use photography to connect with people in a way I can't always do with words. It's like a bridge. That makes sense, given how social you are, Ethan said. Liam's expression changed subtly. That's what people think, isn't it? That I'm this extroverted, confident guy who has it all figured out. Aren't you? Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Liam shook his head. It's mostly an act. Don't get me wrong. I like people, and I enjoy socializing. But there's a difference between being outgoing and feeling connected. I can work a room and still go home feeling completely alone. The honesty of this confession created a shift in the atmosphere. Ethan felt as though he was seeing Liam clearly for the first time, beyond the charming exterior he presented to the world. I wouldn't have guessed that, Ethan admitted. You always seem so confident. Yeah, well, we all have our masks, don't we? Liam said with a small smile. Speaking of which, can I tell you something I've noticed about you? Ethan tensed slightly, but nodded. You're incredibly talented, but you act like you don't believe it. You apologize for your work before anyone even comments on it. Why is that? The question hit close to home, making Ethan uncomfortable. He considered deflecting, but found himself wanting to match Liam's honesty. I guess I'm afraid of rejection. If I acknowledge that I'm trying my best, and people still don't like my work, then the problem is me, not just my technique or approach. That's a heavy burden to carry, Liam said softly. Always doubting yourself like that. It's just how I'm wired, I guess. Liam was quiet for a moment, then said, "For what it's worth, I think your work is exceptional. And I'm not just saying that because we're locked in a photo lab together." Ethan laughed, grateful for the lightening of the mood. "Thanks. That actually means a lot, coming from you." As the night deepened, they returned to their project, printing photographs and discussing composition. They were working closely together when the overhead lights suddenly flickered and went out, leaving only the red safe lights glowing in the darkness. "Power outage," Ethan suggested, looking around at the equipment that had gone silent. "Maybe," Liam said, moving toward the window. "Looks like the whole block might be out. I can't see any lights in the other buildings either." In the dimness, with only the red safe lights functioning on their backup power, the lab took on an even more intimate atmosphere. Shadows deepened, and the space between them seemed to shrink. They were standing close now, both looking out the small window at the darkened campus. "You know," Liam said, his voice lower than before, "I wasn't entirely joking earlier. About the red light." Ethan's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" Liam turned to face him, their features softened by the crimson glow. "I've wanted to tell you something for a long time, but I never found the right moment. Or maybe I was just scared." "You scared?" Ethan tried to joke, but his voice came out unsteady. "Terrified," Liam admitted. "Because it matters. You matter." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Ethan could feel his pulse in his fingertips, in his throat. "The thing is," Liam continued, "I've liked you since our first class together sophomore year. The way you talk about photography, the way you see the world, it's like nothing I've ever encountered before. But I never said anything because you always seemed so focused on your work, and I didn't want to complicate things." Ethan stood frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. Liam, confident, charismatic Liam, had feelings for him? It seemed impossible, yet the vulnerability in Liam's eyes told him it was true. "Say something," Liam prompted after a moment of silence. "Even if it's to tell me I've completely misread the situation." "You haven't," Ethan finally managed. "Misread it, I mean. I just never thought you'd be interested in someone like me." "Someone like you?" Liam repeated, a hint of frustration in his voice. "Ethan, you're extraordinary. The way you see beauty in things most people overlook, the way you lose yourself in your work, it's captivating. I've been making excuses to be near you for months." Under the steady glow of the red safe light, with Liam's words dissolving his doubts, Ethan felt a surge of courage. He moved closer, eliminating the space between them. "So the red light really does mean yes?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Liam's smile was answer enough as he leaned in, closing the final distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle question and answer. Ethan felt Liam's hand come up to cup his face, the touch as careful as if he were handling delicate film. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I've wanted to do that for so long," Liam confessed, his thumb tracing Ethan's cheekbone. "Me too," Ethan admitted. "I just never thought it was possible." They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, adjusting to this new reality. Then Liam stepped back slightly, a look of uncertainty crossing his face. "What happens now? I mean, this changes things between us." The question brought Ethan back to reality. What did this mean for their friendship, their working relationship? Would this complicate everything? His instinct for self-protection kicked in, urging caution. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've never been good at this part." "Neither have I," Liam admitted. "Not when it matters this much." The power chose that moment to return, lights flickering back on and equipment humming back to life. The sudden brightness made them both blink, breaking the spell of the moment. In the harsh fluorescent light, doubts crept back in. "Maybe we should focus on finishing the project," Ethan suggested, retreating to familiar territory. "We still need to complete the assignment." A flash of disappointment crossed Liam's face, but he nodded. "Sure. The project." They returned to work, but the easy rapport from earlier had been replaced by a new tension. Ethan found himself overthinking every movement, every word. He could feel Liam watching him, waiting for some signal about what this meant for them. As they printed the final photographs, Liam broke the silence. I get it if you want to pretend this never happened. If it's too complicated or you're not interested in something more. That's not it, Ethan said quickly. I am interested. I'm just scared. Of what? Ethan sighed, setting down the print he was working on. Of ruining what we have. Of not being enough. Of you realizing I'm not who you think I am. Liam moved closer, careful not to crowd him. I don't have some idealized version of you in my head, Ethan. I see you, your doubts, your perfectionism, all of it. That's who I'm interested in. The sincerity in Liam's voice broke through Ethan's defenses. I've spent so long keeping people at a distance that I'm not sure I know how to let someone in. We can figure it out together, Liam suggested. No pressure, no rush. Just a seeing where this goes. As they talked, they continued working on their project, which had evolved throughout the night. What had started as a straightforward portrait assignment had transformed into something more intimate. A series of photographs exploring vulnerability and connection. They took turns being both photographer and subject, capturing moments of revelation in the red-lit lab. One photograph in particular stood out. Liam had captured Ethan in profile, looking down at a print in the developing tray. The red light carved his features into strong planes, and there was an openness to his expression that Ethan rarely allowed himself to show. When Liam showed him the print, Ethan was startled by what he saw. Is that really how you see me? He asked. It's who you are when you're not hiding, Liam answered simply. As the night progressed into early morning, they found themselves growing tired but reluctant for their time together to end. They created a makeshift sitting area from cushions stored in the supply closet, leaning against the wall and talking about everything and nothing. Favorite photographers, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Do you ever think about what you'll do after graduation? Liam asked, his shoulder pressed comfortably against Ethan's. I'd love to travel, document disappearing ways of life, Ethan said. But realistically, I'll probably end up assisting an established photographer in New York or LA, trying to build connections. You could do both, Liam suggested. Work commercially to fund your personal projects. That's my plan. Where would you go first, if you could go anywhere? Ethan asked. Liam thought for a moment. Peru. My grandmother was from there, and I've always wanted to explore those connections through photography. What about you? Japan. Ethan replied without hesitation. The contrast between ancient traditions and hypermodernity fascinates me. Maybe we could go together someday, Liam said casually, though the suggestion held weight. Ethan found himself imagining it, traveling with Liam, seeing the world through both their perspectives, creating something together. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. I'd like that, he said finally, allowing himself to envision a future that included Liam. As dawn approached, they heard the sound of keys in the main building door. The security guard making his morning rounds would soon discover them. Their night in the locked lab was coming to an end, and with it, the protected space they'd created together. Before we go back to the real world, Liam said, taking Ethan's hand, I want you to know that whatever happens next, I'm glad we got locked in here together. Ethan squeezed his hand in response. Me too, and I want to try this. Us, if you still want to. Liam's smile was answer enough. They gathered their things and their completed project, ready to face the security guard's questions and the bright light of day. But before they left the lab, Liam set up his camera on a tripod, programming the timer. One last photo, he explained, positioning them both in the frame. To remember this night. They stood together as the timer counted down, Liam's arm around Ethan's shoulders, both smiling with the mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration that comes from a night of unexpected revelations. The flash illuminated the lab for an instant, capturing the moment when everything changed. Weeks later, that photograph would sit framed on Ethan's desk, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful developments happen in the darkroom, under the glow of a red light that means yes. Total _char_count, 18,879.